On the table, under a wooden bowl, sits a perfect little goat cheese wrapped in basil leaves. I say. Gail holds up a loaf of bread with an arrow stuck in it, and I laugh. I say, "It's real bakery bread, not the flat, dense loaves we make from our grain rations." I take it in my hand, pull out the arrow, and hold the puncture in the crust to my nose, inhaling the fragrance that makes my mouth flood with saliva. Fine bread like this is for special occasions. Still warm, I say. He plucks a few blackberries from the bushes around us. I catch it in my mouth and break the delicate skin with my teeth, I say. The sweet tartness explodes across my tongue, I say. I watch as Gale pulls out his knife and slices the bread. Gale spreads the bread slices with the soft goat cheese, carefully placing a basil leaf on each while I strip the bushes of their berries. I say, "The food's wonderful, with the cheese seeping into the warm bread and the berries bursting in our mouths." I say, "The fish and greens are already cooking in a stew, but that will be for supper," I say. We decide to save the strawberries and bakery bread for this evening's meal. We drink milk from Prim's goat and eat the rough bread made from the tessera grain. We ate an entire loaf, slice by slice. It was good, hearty bread, filled with raisins and nuts, I say. The supper comes in courses. A thick carrot soup, green salad, lamb chops, and mashed potatoes, cheese and fruit, a chocolate cake. That night we gorged ourselves on dandelion salad and the rest of the bakery bread, I say. The moment I slide into my chair, I'm served an enormous platter of food. Eggs, ham, piles of fried potatoes. A tureen of fruit sits in ice to keep it chilled. The basket of rolls they set before me would keep my family going for a week, I say. There's an elegant glass of orange juice, a cup of coffee. My mother adores coffee, but it only tastes bitter and thin to me. A rich brown cup of something I've never seen. "They call it hot chocolate," says Peter. "It's good," he says. I take a sip of the hot, sweet, creamy liquid, and a shudder runs through me. Even though the rest of the meal beckons, I ignore it until I've drained my cup. Peter is still eating, breaking off bits of roll and dipping them in hot chocolate. But he's knocking back a glass of red juice that he keeps thinning with a clear liquid from a bottle. Judging by the fumes, it's some kind of spirit. From below rises a second tabletop that holds our lunch. Chicken and chunks of oranges cooked in a creamy sauce, laid on a bed of pearly white grain, tiny green peas and onions, rolls, I say, shaped like flowers, and for dessert, a pudding the color of honey. I say, as for the pudding, I can't even guess what's in it. I walk around the room eating goose liver and puffy bread. A silent young man offers us all stemmed glasses of wine. I think about turning it down, but I've never had wine, except the homemade stuff my mother uses for coughs. And when will I get a chance to try it again? I say. I take a sip of the tart, dry liquid, and secretly think it could be improved by a few spoonfuls of honey. He doesn't refuse the offer of wine, but when he starts in on his soup, I realize it's the first time I've ever seen him eat. While they make small talk, I concentrate on the meal. Mushroom soup, bitter greens with tomatoes the size of peas, rare roast beef sliced as thin as paper, noodles in a green sauce, cheese that melts on your tongue, served with sweet blue grapes. About halfway through my glass of wine, my head starts feeling foggy, so I change to water instead. I say, a long board off to the side has been laid with at least 20 dishes. I load a plate with eggs, sausages, batter cakes covered in thick orange preserves, slices of pale purple melon. I have a second plate of hot grain smothered in beef stew. Finally, I fill a plate with rolls and sit at the table, breaking off bits and dipping them into hot chocolate. I say, food is arranged on carts around the room, and you serve yourself. One day, Peter empties out our bread basket, and points out how they have been careful to include types from the districts, he says, along with the refined bread of the capital. The fish-shaped loaf tinted green with seaweed from District 4. The crescent moon roll dotted with seeds from District 11. I cut off a piece of pork, dunk it in mashed potatoes, and start eating. I have dinner that night in my room, ordering an outrageous number of delicacies, eating myself sick, I say. In the silence that follows, delicious smells of our dinner waft in from the dining room. We start the cream and rose petal soup without them, the chicken and creamy orange sauce, the cakes and pudding, bread with butter, noodles and green sauce, the lamb and dried plum stew. Mint is good because we drink mint tea after supper often, I say. A small loaf of bread. It's not the fine white capital stuff. It's made of dark ration grain and shaped in a crescent, sprinkled with seeds. Tonight all I can do is strap myself in and take tiny bites of the bread. It's good. It tastes of home. I finish off the loaf from District 11 and the last of the rabbit. Getting the broth into Peter takes an hour of coaxing, begging, threatening, and yes, kissing. But finally, sip by sip, he empties the pot. I came upon a bush of ruse berries. I strip off the fruit and mash it up in the broth pot with cold water, I say. I make a meal out of the smaller, bonier fish that inhabit the stream down here. We try and eat slowly, but we're both so hungry we're done in a couple of minutes. My stomach is in no way satisfied, I say sweetly. Fresh rolls, goat cheese, apples, and best of all, a tureen of that incredible lamb stew on wild rice. We each have a roll, half an apple, and an egg-sized serving of stew and rice. About half an hour has passed before I decide I have to eat again. While I'm dishing up 2 more small servings of lamb stew and rice, we hear the anthem begin to play. Should we split another roll, too? I ask. I'm going to split one, but I'll save the cheese for tomorrow, I say. When Peter wakes me later, the first thing I register is the smell of goat cheese. He's holding out half a roll spread with the creamy white stuff and topped with apple slices. The strong, fatty cheese tastes just like the kind Prim makes. The apples are sweet and crunchy. I say, while I lay out a big meal. The rest of the rabbits, roots, greens, the rolls spread with the last bit of cheese. The only thing I leave in reserve is the squirrel and the apple. It's funny, I say. I feel almost as if it's the first day of the games again, that I'm in the same position. 21 tributes are dead, but I still have yet to kill Cato. Now it seems the other tributes were just minor obstacles, distractions, keeping us from the real battle of the games, Cato and me, and I turn hungrily to the tray. A bowl of clear broth, a small serving of applesauce, and a glass of water. This is it? I think grouchily. Shouldn't my homecoming dinner be a little more spectacular?